We have Nick Bryant here for the second hour of the program Deadline Live. I'm Jack Blood. Thank you for joining us. Nick has been writing recurrently, focusing on the plight of disadvantaged children in the United States. He's been published in numerous national journals, including the Journal of Professional Ethics, Journal of Applied Developmental Psychology, Journal of Social Distress and Homelessness, Journal of Health Care for the Poor and the Undeserved, the Journal of School Health. He is the author of America's Children, Triumph and Tragedy. He addresses the medical and developmental problems on lower socioeconomic children in America. His mainstream and investigative journalism has appeared in the Twin Cities Reader, Salon, Gear, and even Playboy. His latest book really gets to the core of what our children are up against. Well, we're all up against. The thing that nobody wants to talk about is entitled The Franklin Scandal, the story of Powerbrokers, child abuse, and betrayal. He is Nick Bryant. Nick, thanks for being on the show today.
Hi, Jack. How you doing?
Pretty weighty topic here. The one that nobody ever wants to talk about, the missing children, what happens to them, and how the police, our government, our judges, and the media all seem to be complicit.
Well, certainly the federal government covered up this pedophile network that I've spent nearly 7 years investigating. It was orchestrated by the Department of Justice, and it deployed the FBI and also the Secret Service.
Sure, why not? Yes, and that's why they're covering it up, because there's a lot of dirty hands in here. Why don't you tell people, we've covered this in the past before, Nick, but give us a kind of a synopsis on what the Franklin scandal was. We were just talking about banking and banks and drug laundering, money laundering and banks, the Bilderberg Group here before you came on. This started with an investigation of a bank and led to much deeper waters.
Well, actually, Nebraska legislators started an investigation of the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska. And auditors ultimately determined that nearly $40 million had been embezzled from the credit union. The legislators initially embarked on an investigation of just financial impropriety, but then they came across a vast pedophile network that stretched from coast to coast and deployed blackmail and had connections to very high-ranking people and possibly the Central Intelligence Agency. As strange as that story sounds, it's true. And the legislators really did their best to bring this story out into the light, because it had been in the shadows for a number of years. But they encountered a full-court press by, as I said before, the Department of Justice, FBI, and Secret Service, as well as local police.
Yeah, how can they do this? You know, it's hard. I know people, it sounds, you know, like a big conspiracy. Well, conspiracies do exist, Nick. And in this case, when you've got, you know, our leaders, our police chiefs, people in government, people in the media, all involved in it, all allegedly who could be exposed by this blackmail from this pedophile ring, they really don't have any choice. They're not given any choice. They have to cover this up.
Oh, absolutely. And the kids, I've got nearly 200 flight receipts of the pedophile network, and the kids generally would be flown to Washington, D.C. The vast majority of the flight receipts go to Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., there was a house that was wired for audio and visual where a lot of these pedophilic parties occurred, and drugs were also available, too. And this house was a meeting ground, a stomping ground for the very prominent people in Washington, D.C., and within our government. And there would be straight political parties there, but then at a certain point, someone would break out a joint or a line of coke or start fondling someone, and then people that didn't want to stick around or partake would split, but the people that stuck around, the serious customers, would eventually find themselves blackmailed, and they would be lubricated by alcohol prior to this. So I mean, they were highly vulnerable to this, and this pedophile network, although it provided children, I mean, if you wanted a young man in his 20s or a young woman in her 20s, it would provide you with that too. I mean, whatever tickled your fancy, you would be provided with.
We saw that Bush had a male prostitute going in and acting as a reporter during his administration, which broke out pretty big. People were asking the question, how did this guy get in? He's been, I guess, visiting Tony Blair. He'd been recorded numerous times going to the White House late at night. I forget his name. You know what I'm talking about.
Jeff Gannon.
Yeah. Jeff Gannon, who many people assume, going back to the Franklin cover-up, indeed was Johnny Gosch, including Noreen, Johnny Gosch's mother, he was a paper boy who was kidnapped and involved in this.
Actually, I looked into that, and I didn't find any...
Well, I was always very skeptical of that, too. Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, that doesn't excuse the fact that George Bush is getting visited by a male escort on a regular basis, and they had anointed him to be a reporter.
George H.W. Bush had male escorts taking midnight tours of the White House. And those midnight tours were connected to the two primary pedophilic pimps of this spring that I'm writing about.
Any more? Give us all the details on that, Nick, if you can. We got to watch some of the content here, but do your best to kind of fill in the blanks. This isn't just a Republican thing, by the way. We'll get into that in the show today, but give us all the details on that.
Well, Craig Spence had a house in D.C. in the Colorado neighborhood, and that was the house that was wired for audio and visual.
That was Barney Frank's buddy, no?
Craig Spence was hooked into just about everybody. I mean, it was like he had a direct line to Mount Olympus. Everybody attended his parties, from William Casey to John Glenn to William Sapphire to Ted Koppel. I mean, the shining stars of American politics and the media attended Craig Spence's parties, and that's the house that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The house that was wired for audio and visual.
Whatever happened to him?
He committed suicide, or his death is down as a suicide in Boston. When this story was starting to break, he committed suicide, and he did have late-stage HIV or AIDS, from what I've been told, and this was in 1990. So it's within the realm of possibility that he ended his own life, but there are certainly a number of suspicious suicides other than Craig Spence's connected to this pedophile network.
I mean, you've got to protect this at all costs, right, Nick? The thing that always amazes me about this is that, you've done all this investigative research, which is quality research from my point of view. We've had people over the years that have done research like this, and you try to go tell somebody about this, and they're just not going to believe you. It's too fantastic. They're good people. They can't understand how power works and what these people are like.
Well, I remember I wrote an article that was very solid, and I felt like it was bulletproof, libel-proof. I distilled this huge rambling story into like 10,000 words, and I shopped it around I live in New York City, and I shopped it around to all the major magazines in New York. And I can remember I was having a meeting with the editor-in-chief of a magazine, and he was very skeptical of this, because in this story, you